Thanks for joining. My name is Sunil Gupta and I'm here at the Vadehra Art Gallery in New Delhi, which is hosting my exhibition, and it's called Cruising. And if you haven't heard of cruising before, it's this activity that many gay men engage in that they leave their homes to go out seeking similar gay men who might be interested in some casual encounters. So we're just going to start here with a project that in fact is called Cruising in the 1960s in Delhi. And here's a picture of my house that I grew up in. It's in Nizamuddin East, and I shot this actually in 1982, 20 years later, let's say. And it all looks exactly the same. And I retraced my walk from this house to a cruising site very close by at the back of Humayun's. And it's a series of 23 pictures, but we're showing only a few here. So, for example, this is inside the tomb's walls. They presented a very handy architecture which was provided cover and a site for men to meet. And further along is a view of the walk itself. This is the ground on which I walked through. There's a wall you can see. And in the background, of course, is the tomb. And this all looked pretty much the same 20 years later. Nothing had really changed much. So I was quite lucky that way. I think sometimes with photography, luck seems to play a part. So it's a straightforward documentation of a walk. That's what's going on here. So we're going to go to the next room where we're going to look at what happened next. Let's look at this one here. This is what happened. That's the next step. We're now inside the grounds of the tomb itself. This is Humayun's tomb, of course. And I'm trying to make some kind of Indian gay image. Having been a very out gay young man in the West, of Indian origin, and not coming across very much in reference to Indian gays, I thought, now I'm in India, there must be some way of photographing it. And I found that although there were men who described themselves as being gay, they didn't want to be photographed. So this was one of the kind of compromises. So what's important to me is that man is gay, we're in Delhi, this is my own place, we just can't see who it is. And this image, then I was sort of experimenting with a small number of people. We were going around various places where people met. This was around Kudu. And Veroli in those days was much more empty, as you can see, and so provided a lot of spaces. This is us. Actually, we obviously didn't show this at the time. This is my close friend, Sunil Gupta. He was a historian and academic. He taught at Ramjas College in Delhi University. We were close friends. We met in Montreal. He'd come to study, and I was also studying there. My parents had migrated there. And he just chose to come back and live and work in Delhi as a gay man, and I chose to not come back because you couldn't live here as a gay man, I thought, not openly. And so this one here is another example of trying to, again, make some reference to gay life in Delhi. So in the 60s, 70s, the Oberoi Hotel, this coffee shop, was well known to the scene, and there was a place to meet fellow gay men as well. You didn't have to go outside and hang out on the streets. So we made a kind of picture like this. So this body of work was the basis from which the next body of work emerged. So let's say that was around 82. So by 86, I was commissioned to make some work for an exhibition called Body Politics by the Photographers Gallery in London. And I thought I'm going to use the money and the time to really come back and deal with this Indian gay scene using photography. So I made a series of pictures. They're called Exiles, and it's a small cast of characters. I decided not to do documentary, not because you can't do it, you could do it, but it didn't seem fair and ethical to hide in a bush and jump out and take a picture of people having sex, and they didn't want to have their picture taken. So people are acting in these pictures, but they are really gay and they're really Indian, and we're in India. And then I spoke to people, all kinds of people, not necessarily the people in the picture, who told me some things, and I added that here. I thought the pictures alone didn't tell the whole story. And so some of these, like this, for example, this is a reference to weddings. It says, everyone is married. Mother wants me to get married, I probably will. There's family name and respect to consider. And then in their gate, it says, even if you have a lover, a gay lover, you should get married and have children who would look after you in old age. So there's all these different reasons that were very compelling for people to get married at the time. This one was a bit unusual. It's got a white person in it. I thought the show was made for a Western audience in London. I thought it was important there was a non-Indian, a white person in it. So it's a way of bringing them into the project. And interestingly enough, it's talking about AIDS. Americans talking about AIDS and distributing condoms. Nobody believes them. They're always telling us what to do. So the gay men in Delhi were aware of AIDS in '87, although the Indian government was heavily resisting it and saying that we couldn't get it here. And so this was what the politics, Indira is vision, Indira is Indira Gandhi, and that's Indira's vision. And so I thought, that's the Indian family, and just outside it is this gay couple. And it's the question of, are we inside or outside the family? And yeah, so like that, the pictures had these themes. This one was about the class problem in India. This still goes on today. Difficulty with organizing a gay group is the question of whether one should include the riffraff. So it's called Exiles because of my relationship. I felt that I'm saying goodbye to someone. Okay. Yeah, that I couldn't stay here, given the circumstances of the time. So meanwhile, so we look at the project next door. It's the opposite. It's about arrival. Later. So in this room we have Arrival. It's the most recent work. It was made this summer. It was made by my partner and myself, Charan Singh, who is also from Delhi. So these are LGBTQ asylum seekers who've come to live in the UK, escaping from various very hostile situations in their home countries. And the work was made during the Commonwealth Games, and these were put up life-size in Birmingham where the games took place. And so we just have the name of the person and the country they come from. And so a lot of African countries are like this. They become very actively homophobic. And then Eastern Europe and Russia as well, and parts of Latin and Central America, and of course South Asia. So we asked people to bring things that related to their culture or their country. And we brought our own Indian backdrops. These are Indian cloth backdrops. And so on. So the Russian one, for example, brought a headdress that was special to the region of Russia he comes from, in Siberia. And so on. And the West African is wearing fabric from that region. And the Nigerian man is wearing cloth that's specific to Nigeria, and so on. Let's go up and we'll have a look at an older, a more established project. So in this room we have a project called Christopher Street. It was shot in 1976 in New York. I would gone there to be with a guy I met in college. He'd started to work and I was doing my MBA. And I'd managed to leave the city my parents lived in. So it was a kind of freedom for me too. And I encountered a kind of public gay space, I think for the first time. Up until then, there had been this gay life. Mostly it was private, and mostly it was hidden. A lot of it was at night. And then suddenly, here they are. We're on the streets. And so every weekend, gay men would promenade up and down this neighborhood, especially this street, Christopher Street. And they were looking at, they'd come out to look at other gay men, and we looked at, so very much kind of cruising in that sense, but also kind of in a social sense. And it was after Stonewall, but before AIDS. So there was still a lot of positive atmosphere of finally of being liberated in some way. And so in New York City at that time, hundreds of people were arriving, young people, getting away from oppressive social structures in small towns and families. So it was a kind of moment of joy almost. And famously, it was also a time of too many men and not enough time. So taking a picture seemed like a quicker way of collecting people. So that's what I was doing. So it wasn't really a study. So there were actually various kinds of people there. Not just white gay men as it seems, but there were black people and women and so on. And this part here, this particular collection of gay men actually, dressed in various, very identifiable ways, and very differently, this one as opposed to those two. But you would recognize them as gay men. And then of course, someone like him who was just casually walking by. So I would just walk up to people. And I think because I wasn't doing a study, just kind of doing what they did, they were also out looking. Like him, I walked up to him, and he's just looking back at me. And it wasn't problematic. I mean, people weren't getting annoyed or upset about it. So I was just shooting people I fancied. So I was about 24 myself, so was a kind of fun thing to do. But I was a poor student, so all I could do was shoot it. This is analog photography. I'm on film with a camera. And so I couldn't afford to print them very much. So this work never got to be seen. I only made a few prints at the time, and the rest were just negatives, never been printed. I had some contact sheets, that's all. This book reminds me of Carrie from Sex and the City, but much earlier. So from the archives, I had them scanned quite recently, a few years ago, and in 2018 a book came out of them. From the scans, the publisher said, let's publish them. And that's what got this project really a lot of attention. The book did quite well, and curiously it got some attention from the fashion people. And a designer made some fashion collection based on the clothes. Helmut Lange, they asked me to come and take the pictures of that collection in the same locations on Christopher Street. That was fun. It kind of led to some new work in a way. Yeah. So it's a kind of urban space that I haven't seen anywhere else actually. Didn't exist in London, it doesn't exist here. So should we go down and have a look at the last historical project down there? And finally, there's this project which is called Tales of a City, and it's Delhi, it's a medieval city, Shah Jahanabad. I researched actually literally tales, meaning text-based stories about old Delhi that I found in the library in the India International Center. And so I went off to photograph the places they're talking about in the Red Fort. And so it's the Mughal Empire architecture. And I was doing this also in relation to the fact that as gay people we have a kind of hidden history. So although I'm able to record what happened to me, and luckily a little bit what happened to me earlier, because in some of the architecture is still around from before, from the 60s. But we haven't got too many stories about us from this period and from history, so I think it's up to us to kind of look around and try and imagine them, that in our historical past, kind of unspoken, there's a gay history to be told. So. And I think we've had a lengthy silence about it here. And just in the last 20 years, people are speaking up a bit more, so hopefully we get more and more of it. And I think it's up to artists to also create histories where there are none to be obviously found, just using their imagination. And I'm just going to end the show bit. We come back to this vivacious tomb. And it's juxtaposed with the house where we started. And so somebody who grew up here and then left, these two buildings remained in my imagination. And there weren't places I could describe to anybody there. So it was a strange nostalgia come unexplainable past that you carry around with you. So I was very excited to be able to show it here in a place where people recognize both the monuments and the houses. Don't have to be explained anything. So I think that's all I wanted to say about the whole show. There's some books we can quickly have a look at. I've produced books over the years. I always did a bit of writing. Some of them were curatorial projects. Click was a survey of contemporary Indian photography, which I made for this gallery. This is From Here to Eternity. It's a very recent publication. It's a kind of diary of what happened when I was taking the pictures over my life, different things that happened. Wish You Were Here was an Indian publication from 2010 or something, and it was again it's a series of postcards from me to the audience, and it was crucial at the time again to mention gay life in print. You know, we felt you go to a bookshop in Delhi, there's nothing says gay on it. This is the latest photo book. It's 82, and we're in London. Street life in London. I wanted to do like Christopher Street in London, but there's no such thing. It wasn't happening there. This is a monograph about my work made by the gallery here, Vadehra, in 2011, and we were able to call it queer, which was interesting because 20 years earlier when I made Exiles, you couldn't say gay, but suddenly you could now say it in print. This is a book that was published in 2019 about gay couples in London that was shot in the mid-80s. So this is all coming out of the archives. And this is a book of Christopher Street, the pictures we saw upstairs. And this is the newest book that's going to be published on the 15th of September. And it's a collection of writings that I've done over the years since I left college. And yeah, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed having a look. And if you're in Delhi, drop by. It's on for another week, the show, I think, till the 16th. Thank you very much.